just going to share with you a short story of my life and just tell you about United Hatzalah starting so many years back with a dream of mine that started accidentally when I was 6 years old. So when I was 6 years old, when I was 6 years old, I was almost killed in a bomb attack. Some of you Israelis who know Jerusalem, so the first bomb attack in Israel happened on a bus called the number 12 bus in Beit Vegan, where I grew up. I was a kid born into an American family, and I was walking with my brother in the afternoon, on a Friday afternoon, and a bus right in front of us blew up, the number 12 bus. That was the first bus that ever blew up. And I remember an older man on the floor yelling for help. The bus was on fire and smoke was coming out, but he was yelling for help. All he wanted us is to pick him up, to help him get up. My brother was 10 years old, and I was 6. And we just ran away. We were so scared and we just ran away. So for years, it followed me, this whole experience. And I decided when I was about 14 years old that I want to be a doctor when I grow up and help people and save people's lives. So when I was 15 years old, I heard of a course that they had a course, an EMT course, in Yerushalayim, which is very close here, in the woods of Jerusalem. And I went with a couple of my friends, and we did the first EMT course of my life. And I was about 15 years old. I was very young. I can tell you the truth, I lied a little about my age. It wasn't like today. You could. I was supposed to be 16. I said I was 16. And it was an amazing experience. After we finished that course, I actually went to volunteer in an ambulance. So I was a volunteer in an ambulance. This is 1988. I was a volunteer in an ambulance here in Yerushalayim in Magen David Adom. It was an amazing experience. All I wanted, my dream was to save someone's life. You know, I don't know if that was the experience I had when I was 6, but that was my dream, to save someone. So actually, the great part of being in an ambulance is helping people. You help a lot of people. You help people go to a hospital. You help people to calm them down. You help people in car accidents. But my real dream was to actually get to someone laying on the floor, not breathing, no pulse, do CPR, and then see him walk. And for a year and a half, I was a volunteer in an ambulance, and it never happened to me. Whenever we went and we were supposed to get somewhere, whenever it was, when we were supposed to get somewhere, so the traffic was so bad, as you see it here. Jerusalem, this is the Begin Road. This is not 1988, before Begin Road. But this is how the roads look in Jerusalem, or not any other place, during the day. And whenever they had a real emergency, we never got there in time. And I remember a 7-year-old child in Beit Vegan who was choking from a hot dog, and his parents called for help. They called the ambulance. They said, they were yelling and screaming for help. And we were in French Hill, which is on the other side of town. And this incident happened in Beit Vegan. And I knew the family, so when we got the call and I was in the ambulance, I knew exactly where they live, and I told the driver of the ambulance, I'll show you how to get there. And it took us 20 minutes to get to this call. We came from the other side of town, and because of the traffic and the distance, so when we arrived there, we found this kid on the floor. No one actually did anything to him, so we were the first ones to actually touch him. Everyone was yelling. The parents were hysterical. A few neighbors there. One neighbor spilled water on him. He thought he'd wake him up that way. And he choked from a hot dog. And we started CPR. And 1 minute later, a doctor shows up, and he heard the commotion going on. He heard the ambulance arriving. So he actually ran up. He was an older man, a French doctor, and he said, how can I help? So we told him, this kid is found on the floor, he probably choked. He went over and he put a stethoscope and he checked the kid, and he checked his heartbeat to see if anything, and he'd see any signs. He checked the child's pupils, and he said, the kid is dead, don't do anything, don't torture the body. And he said, bring a sheet, and that was that was the end of this little child. In that moment, I decided that's the end. I'm not going to continue volunteering. This is not going to be my life anymore. To seeing so many people die because the lack of the response time. And it doesn't make sense anymore. This whole thing of we traveling 20 minutes to save a child choking doesn't make sense. And the fact that the doctor knew about it only when the ambulance arrived because of the noise of the siren doesn't make sense. There must be a better way. So I got together, I actually said I'm going to either stop volunteering or think of a new idea. So I got together 15 of my friends, that we were volunteers in the ambulance. Every week we would go. And we actually started volunteering saying we're going to go ahead and respond to emergencies before the ambulances. So we live in Beit Vegan. We'll get together our group, and whenever they have an emergency call, we'll respond. And we went over to the ambulance organization. We said, listen, we have this idea. All we need is emergency calls. Let us know about every call that comes in. And guess what? This is Israel and bureaucracy and unions and other things, and they literally kicked us out of the room. Said, we don't need your help. You want to volunteer here? It's fine, but don't give us any new ideas. Whenever someone calls for help, an ambulance is going to arrive. So I decided to use my Israeli chutzpah technique, and we actually bought scanners. You listen into the radio of the ambulances, and we started listening to the calls that way. And that week, we heard of a call of a 70-year-old man crossing the street in Rehov Pisgah, which is the main street in Beit Vegan, and a car hit him. And I was literally in my father's office, which was a block away. And when I ran there, because I heard the call, they sent an ambulance there, and I ran there. I had no equipment on me, but the man was on the floor, and he was bleeding terribly from his neck. And all I needed to do is stop his bleeding. He was on Coumadin, which is a blood thinner, and you need to stop his bleeding immediately. And I took my yarmulke. I had nothing. I had no other thing. And I thought about this idea in that second. I folded it to two, and with a lot of pressure, I stopped his bleeding. And he was literally 2 minutes away from dying. When the ambulance arrived, almost 20 minutes later, I gave him the first patient in my life that I saved. And a few days later, I went to visit him in the hospital, and he actually thanked me and hugged me and actually said, you're the kid that saved my life, thank you very much. And I realized that he was a Holocaust survivor. So it made a big difference in my life. And that second, I decided this is what I want to do in life. This is what I want to put into. If I save one person in a 1 week that I came up with the idea, we could save many more. So we actually got together a bunch of people. This is a few years back, but we started with 15 volunteers, and today we have over 2,000 volunteers in Israel. We have actually 2,100 volunteers. And the idea didn't stop only with volunteers responding to emergencies, listening to scanners, but we actually got a whole dispatching center. People could call us. We actually have arrangements with over 50 ambulance companies in Israel. Whenever they have a call, let us know about it. We'll send one of our Meshuggahs to go save them. While you send the ambulance, we don't charge any money for our service. It's free service completely. So you need to be fully dedicated and motivated to save lives. And then we come up with an idea with a technology that the closest 5 volunteers respond to emergencies by their location. So we don't have to actually look for them on radio. We send an alert. The closest people by GPS get the call according to their distance. And then we came up with the idea, why wait for our cars responding to calls? Let's get something even quicker. And we got the ambucycles, which have all the medical equipment an ambulance has, besides for a bed. And we actually get there in an average response time now in Israel, nationwide, in 3 minutes, which is the fastest in the world. And then the last thing, I'm not going to continue because my story goes more and more, but just for you to have a taste, I started as an Orthodox. I'm an Orthodox volunteer. I'm a Dati, whatever they call it. Some people call me Haredi because I have this yarmulke. Whatever they want to call me, you can call me. But I grew up in a religious neighborhood, and I never knew other people besides religious people because they were my friends. This is where I grew up. But then we started joining in Chiloni volunteers in Tel Aviv and Herzliya and other places. But then a couple of years ago, a volunteer in East Jerusalem, a person I knew from East Jerusalem who volunteered in the ambulance, he said, he waited for over an hour for his father. When his father collapsed in East Jerusalem, he waited for over an hour for an ambulance to come. And he says, I want to join Hatzalah. I want to have a bunch of Arab volunteers join Hatzalah. And that was already too much. So I said, let me think about it. He says, my father could have been alive. He was 53 years old if one of the Hatzalah members would have saved him. And that moment, I said to myself, it's really not about saving Jews or saving Muslims or Christians. It's about saving people. So I said, yes, let's go for it. And today we have over 150 Muslim volunteers, together with Charedim and Chilonim, volunteering and saving lives. So this is our group that we expanded actually not only in Israel, we expanded in Brazil, Panama, and many other countries around the world. And we have thousands of other volunteers. This story is a little longer than 12 minutes, but this is it. My last question, and I got a 1 minute from someone who donated. My last question is, how many of you know how to save lives? So we have 2 people, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 people here. Now, if something would be happening upstairs, how many of you would actually know about it? If a child, a little girl would actually choke upstairs in the cafeteria, how many of you would know about it? No one. That our idea was that we actually if something would happen upstairs, I would get a call on my little phone, my GPS phone, and I would run, actually, in the middle of my speech here, run upstairs and save this little girl and give her the opportunity. So that's United Hatzalah. Thank you very much.